Okay. The first ornament that it's customary to add is a little projecting line here on the very far corner that seems to point straight upward. Okay? Now, why do we put that one on? Well, the Talmud in the Palestinian Talmud, as it's called, the Talmud Yerushalmi in Maseches Chagiga, tells us that they ask the letter Beis two questions. So who are the they? Well, supposedly it's the Malachim, the angels that the Talmud is talking about. They ask the letter Beis, who created you? And the letter Beis points upward with one hand and says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed is He created me. They then ask him a second question, Mashmo, what is the name of the one who created you? And then the Beis points behind him, over his shoulder, so to speak. And that's the reason that we add another little point pointing backwards to the letter that is behind him, to the Aleph. So when they ask him, what is the name of the one who created you? The letter Beis responds, Echad Shmo. The one whose name is one. The one whose name is ultimate unity. And that's referring to the Aleph, which is representative of God's ultimate unity, of God's uniqueness. So these 2 points are referring to Kabbalistically to the answer to these questions that the Beis gives the angels and other supernal beings that inquire of him. Now the other ornament that we add to the letter Beis is a little item called a makel, meaning a stick. And we put that right up here on the top of the Beis. And we give it a little antenna, like that. It's just like a little stick with a ball in the end. Partially the reason why we do this is to clearly distinguish the Beis from the Kaf. That's one reason. There are other Kabbalistic reasons as well why we add that tag, this little makel, as it's also called. However, one thing that should be kept in mind is that it should be small and indented on the top of the letter. You don't want to make one large and right here at the edge of the letter, because then our Beis is starting to look at that point like another Hebrew letter, which is called a lamed, and we don't want that. So we simply make a little antenna on top. And when we talk about tagim, which are the crowns on the letters, we're going to discuss these a little bit more. All right. So there you go. That's a well-written Beis, as it should appear initially in the Torah script. Now, as we said, the question of the fundamental form of the Hebrew letters becomes an issue when you find a letter that's written with a rounded top, like that. That creates a problem for us, because if we say, and actually, you know what, I'm going to make this, let's just reduce this here to complete fundamental form. Let's get rid of the heel and all the ornaments. If you find a Beis written like that, with a rounded top but a sharp lower corner, and you hold that the fundamental form of the Beis is like this, then that means that this Beis is invalid. And it's not in a tefillin and mezuzahs, for technical reasons that we'll talk about later, it's impossible to correct it. And you'd be stuck, basically. However, if you hold that the Hebrew letter, that the proper form is only when you have the lower corner sharp and the upper corner can be rounded, if you hold that's the proper form of the Beis, that's the proper fundamental form, then really this is okay. And you should be able to, you can just simply add ink here to correct it, and sharpen up the corner, because you're not really losing anything, because after all, you've satisfied the fundamental form of it, which is really that the bottom corner has to be sharp. The top one can be rounded. Now, what do you do practically? That's the theory. Practically speaking, if you find a Beis with a rounded top, since there's an argument in Jewish law, there's a safek, a doubt as to which of these is the proper form, we rely on a very interesting technique to clarify the doubt. This is a little-known halacha. Any time that you have a doubt regarding the fundamental form of a letter, Anytime you have a doubt whether or not a letter is written in accordance with the correct fundamental form, we have a doubt what the fundamental form is, you clarify the doubt with what's called a shailas tinuk. You ask a child. The halacha is, you find a child that's eno tipesh eno chacham, a child who's not overly wise or below average intelligence, just an average child. You cover the surrounding letters and you show them the one that's in doubt and you ask them, what letter is that? And their answer, their first impression of what the letter is what tells you what the letter really is. The reason why is that since we have a doubt as to what letter this is it a kaf or is it a beis? We're not 100% sure. We're not really sure if it satisfies the fundamental form. Well, what ultimately determines that is how it's read and how it's understood. Now, adults who tend to get very overcomplicate things, we tend to overthink things sometimes. In particular, we tend to try to rationalize things when we intellectually have a doubt. A child will look at something and give you his unvarnished first impression. So a child's impression of what that letter is, whether it's a kaf or a beis, is considered to be an unvarnished, true judgment of what that letter really is. So if you find a beis written like this in tefillin or mezuzos, or if you find it on Shabbat during the Torah reading, because on Shabbos you cannot correct a letter, you call a child over, you cover the surrounding letters, and you ask them what it is. If the child says it's a beis, then it's absolutely a beis, and you can even later, even in tefillin and mezuzos, you can come and add your point here at the top and then add the heel at the back and correct the letter. If the child says that it's a kaf, in tefillin and mezuzos you can't do anything, and you're more or less stuck in that case. Then it's a kaf. It's the wrong letter, and you cannot go back